So my name is Matt Howard. I'm one of the co-directors of Iraq Veterans Against the War with Maggie Martin. Um, we had a delegation of folks that headed out to Standing Rock in probably around, I think folks started getting out there November 18th, something like that. And I drove with another member who couldn't unfortunately be here from New York, Eli Wright, who was a combat medic in the Army and served in Iraq. And so we drove from New York with a bunch of gear. We picked up a military tent along the way in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and then landed in Standing Rock around the 23rd, I think it was, the 22nd and the 23rd. When we got into Oceti Sakowin, the main camp, I think we both kind of experienced this moment of kind of almost this like almost physical sensation of being in a place that felt really familiar, in the sense that the militarization around the camp, the concertina wire, the barricades, the helicopters that were buzzing overhead really frequently, the floodlights that DAPL had installed on the hills that you can see in some of those pictures. For both of us, we kind of like looked at each other and had this sense of going back to Iraq, going back to a forward operating base out there. And the very first thing that we linked up with our folks that had already kind of set up camp, and went to the vets tent to link up with folks there. And the very first thing they said was, "Okay, you guys are vets. Hey, a bunch of militarized looking white dudes came in a bunch of unmarked cars. Go find them and keep them there if you find them." It's like, holy shit. Well, so I think that it very quickly, I think, as a lot of folks have said, there's like a sense of a very different rhythm of life. What I say this piece about the militarized, the kind of militarized, especially northern part of the camp next to the bridge, but that was not the case inside of the camp, right? And I think that's like as has been demonstrated already. I think there was a lot of things that were really beautiful. What I kind of have told folks is that my experience was that I had no touch point for any of it, over and over and over again. And I'm, that's not the case for me all that frequently. And so I think that, our folks very quickly, we connected with some of our allies with the Indigenous Peoples Power Project, and the Grassroots Global Justice Alliance, who had a delegation. But as we were kind of coming up there, we started to hear about this veterans mobilization. And to be honest, that wasn't on our radar. And as we read the op order, and op order is kind of a military who, what, where, when, why, we're like, a number of us were feeling pretty uncomfortable about it, to be 100% honest. Because for some of us, I feel like there was a sense of like, this does feel a little bit militarized. It does feel like there are a lot of X factors here that could not work out. And if I was DAPL, I would throw 50 vets into the midst of there as infiltrators and screw a lot of shit up for people. And so I think the more that we thought about it and the more we realized the timing about it, the kind of sense of serendipity, hey, we already have a number of folks here, we started to think, actually, we should stay. Because there are warrior societies out here that are holding it down from the different nations, but we might be one of the few groups of organized vets out here. So we put the call out pretty quickly to our members, like, let's join this. And we had, and interestingly, I kind of feel like Standing Rock, for a lot of folks, not just our community, is kind of like this nerve bundle that got touched, and it kind of electrified a network, because we had folks that had been really involved in IVAW in the past and kind of had taken a break from it who showed up. We had new folks that had never been involved in IVAW who showed up, which was, I think, really incredible. And obviously, I don't know the last time that many veterans have shown up to anything political since maybe as far back as the bonus army back in the 20s. That's probably not true. At least since the 70s with VVAW, and so I think that we basically started to build relationships with folks on the ground, relationships that we either already had or that folks kind of introduced us, and connect to the headsmen, the Oceti Sakowin headsmen, and some representatives from the tribe. And it was very clear that at that point that the desire was, we don't want to necessarily send a bunch of people in kind of haphazardly to take a hill. We actually want to kind of dial some of that back. And I think that, I think it was Dave who was talking about trauma. Faith Spotted Eagle, who's an elder, who I think had, really held some amazing space and kind of touched upon the fact that there was this kind of linked trauma, or at least an understanding of trauma, both for indigenous communities, but also for the veterans that were there, right? I think that who knows, it's hard to know what would have happened if the blizzard hadn't taken place. But I think that, and I think that for some veterans, which I can understand, there was a sense of frustration because people did want to be in service by using their bodies, right? And that can play out in a whole lot of different ways. And I think that part of how we understood our role to be is to support in the ways that leadership there, Native leadership, really envisioned us to be there. Whether that was de-escalatory or whatever that looked like. I think that myself and a few other folks stayed for about 2.5 weeks. As has been touched on, when the easement was declared denied, I think there was a kind of uneasy sense, and we decided to leave a stay behind crew. And after the blizzard, we helped evacuate people that weren't prepared. And our stay behind folks who were kind of helping, supporting, cleaning up, and doing various things, realized pretty quickly that that the wishes of the elders in the camp was that if you're not 100% ready to stay here in these conditions, like, maybe it's not a good idea to be here. In the sense of how that can play out for, just the kind of collectivity. We still have a few folks there that have been there for months and really have been supporting more as individuals. I think that, I think for a lot of our people, it was a really profound experience. I think people who came in as deep atheists had experiences they wouldn't have expected. I think that it has got the gears going for me a lot about what our role is in future things like this. But what about Standing Rock is an example that we need to take into different communities, and be building our future work around the sense of political vision, the sense of solidarity, things like that. Thanks.